A warm welcome to A Nurse's Lift to Work with Tina and Kate, coaching podcast by two healthcare professionals. We are friends, we are nurses, master NLP coaches, hypnotherapists, parents and business owners. We are busy people juggling many things just like you.
You are in for a treat. We will chat about informal coaching tips, coping strategies, and how to effectively change your mindset and have some fun along the way. So, hop on board with us for A Nurse's Lift to Work. Here we go.
Hello everybody and welcome to A Nurse's Lift to Work. I'm Kate.
I'm Tina, and today we have a guest with us.
Yes, a very special guest. Please do the honours and introduce yourselves to everybody.
Thank you. So I'm Vicky Bartlett. I'm Director of Patient Care at Rowcroft Hospice in Torquay.
And Vicky's joined us because we are going to have a series of nurses and people who have key roles who work with nurses come in to chat to us about some of their perspectives. So Vicky has very kindly volunteered some of her time. So thank you, Vicky. So shall we just start by sort of saying, so where do you work and how long have you been there?
Yep. So I work at Rowcroft Hospice in Torquay, which is an amazing place to work. It's a charity providing end-of-life care to patients and their families in Torbay in South Devon. And I have been there. I've just come past my 6-year anniversary, having worked there. Previously worked in the NHS for the whole of my career in nursing. And it was quite a big change moving to Rowcroft from the sort of comfort in a way of the NHS. So, but I'm so pleased I did. And yeah, it was a brilliant change to have made. So yeah, so 6 years.
Yeah, 6 years. And like you said, going to work in a charity, because I've had a similar experience. I had lots of questions at the time when I made that move from my nursing colleagues saying like, what are you doing that for? And what about your pension and stuff like this?
Yeah.
What was on your mind? What was your thinking process as you made that decision to move to the charity?
Yeah, it felt like a big leap, if I'm completely honest. And I too had the sort of logical thoughts about, oh, what about my pension and things like that. I kept my pension. It's a really important point to get across there. But I'd been very fortunate that throughout my nursing career, I've had lots of opportunities to do teaching and education. And when I worked in Devon, I was invited to come and do some teaching for Rowcroft Hospice about Parkinson's disease, which I'm super passionate about, like to the nerdiest degree of possibility. So I'd done a lot of teaching there for them, and I really liked the team at Rowcroft. And I felt for a long time that it was a great place, and I just loved the days that I went there and did the teaching. So when I saw a job come up, I thought long and hard about it. I mulled it over an awful lot, had lots of conversations with them, and I felt very I've always felt very much if I apply for a job, I've got to be like 150%. I can't do it if I'm not. So I spent a lot of time deliberating over it. And I had started off my career in a hospice down the far end of Cornwall. And my mum had been cared for in hospice. So I knew I liked hospices and I liked end of life. And I'd experienced quite a lot of that with Parkinson's nursing. So I applied thinking haven't got much of a chance of getting this because, Rowcroft's such an amazing place. They will have millions of people who want this job. And in fairness, there was a lot of competition, but obviously I did get the job.
I just want to spend a moment to go woohoo and all that.
Yeah.
I know, I'm like, that is amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it was amazing. And from the very first day, have been so welcome to Rowcroft as well. I have had many jobs that have not started quite so well. I've got a few horror stories there, but my first day at Rowcroft was an amazing first day. I felt so welcomed. Everything was ready for me. Every single little detail had been thought about to make my first day the best it could be. And never in my life have I had that experience ever.
There is a big difference, isn't there, sometimes between the NHS, people's experience in the NHS as a massively large organisation with smaller sectors like the private sector, the hospice sector. So there is quite a notable difference sometimes, isn't there?
Yeah. I could tell the horror story of when I moved several counties to a new job, and I turned up for my new job and the hospital I was working at was closed. And I mean closed, like shut down, closed.
Oh my goodness,
And
really?
I'd moved everything, I don't know, about 3 or 4 hours away from where I'd previously lived to find it completely shut. It was fine. I still had a job, but my manager had forgotten to tell me that the job I was doing for that hospital, well, it wasn't happening because they shut it down.
Oh
So
my heavens.
it was a terrible first day. So yes,
Oh.
Rowcroft is the complete opposite to that.
Oh gosh, yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Thinking about
listeners, if you think you're having a bad day, just think about that story.
yes,
I do. I often
absolutely.
do reflect on that and think, gosh, I coached that all right. So
Yeah,
yeah.
gosh, you must be
Mm.
so resourceful. So I know there's a lot in your career because you're a Queen's nurse as well, aren't you, Vicky? And I
Yeah,
think there'll
I
be
am.
people listening in that someone knows exactly what that is and other people
Mhm.
won't. So can you chat a bit about what a Queen's nurse is and the Queen's Nursing Institute?
Yeah, I'm really proud to be a Queen's nurse. And it's a title that is given to recognise leaders in community nursing. And I got that title. I got it when my daughter was about a year old, so 2014, because she came to the ceremony. So I just remember that and prayed she didn't cry in this lovely hotel in London. But yeah, that's been an amazing thing for me to be is a Queen's nurse. And I was also the Queen's nurse lead for the Southwest for quite some time. Um, and it's just given me so many other opportunities as well. So part of that commitment to being a Queen's nurse is that you're constantly developing and learning, which actually we do as nurses anyway. I think we love doing that. But
Is this something that is this something that you apply for, or you are recognised as because somebody's nominated you?
well,
How
it's
does
quite
it
massive
work?
actually. You have to apply, but you have to be nominated by patients,
Yeah.
but also colleagues as well. It's a really vigorous process, and then it goes up to a panel and they make a decision if you are eligible or not. It's the whole process is quite daunting. And actually, I was encouraged by a head of nursing I met at Torbay, who was a Queen's nurse, and he said, "This is an amazing network. I think you would really fit in. Don't be put off by the process." And he really encouraged me to do it, and I'm so glad he did because from that I've done lots of stuff. I've had quite a few articles published in journals, but also I've been part of steering groups and I've done much more teaching. But probably the most amazing thing is that I've met lots of other nurses across the whole country who have been able to support me with certain things and me with them, support them with things. So I find it like it's like a real family thing. And I think as nurses, we really value that. And I did a talk for the Queen's Nursing Institute recently. And then as a spin-off from that, I've had a few meetings with a couple of Queen's nurses up in Bradford, which I would never normally, like from Devon, wouldn't ever cross my radar. But so many similarities about some of the work that we're trying to do. So yeah, it's been a great thing to be involved in.
What was your
Absolutely.
talk about, Vicky?
It was to do with palliative care. And it was around having newly qualified nurses in palliative care and
Yay.
how we've used a rotational model in the hospice for our newly qualified nurses. So really proud of that. And yeah, it's good to
Oh,
share
that's
that.
amazing. You know, the brilliant thing is as well is especially for well, you know, for any nurse, is you sometimes get funneled into what you're doing, your speciality, and it can be a challenge to see outside of the box and see what's actually available to you. There is so much stuff out there that we just don't necessarily know about unless somebody tells you. So this is amazing because, you know, the possibilities are endless in our profession. It's
And the
Yeah.
crossover you get, you know, talking to children's nurses, district nurses, health visitors, that you need that bit of you need that bit of a poke, push you out of your comfort zone and think, oh, actually, we could do that. I know we're completely different
Yeah.
setting, but we could do that. So yeah,
Yeah.
I find that really helpful.
I remember going to Queen's Nurses Conference when I worked for the Royal College of Nursing, and there was I sat next to a practice nurse, and I'd never really, other than on the receiving end of practice nursing as a patient, but I never really had a chat with a practice nurse. And it was such an eye-opener for me. I came away thinking, gosh, I didn't know half of that. And also just a great connection for the future. So she and I kept in touch. So you're absolutely right. So we're going to just change track a bit, Vicky, and ask
Mhm.
you, what was the light bulb moment when you decided, yep, nursing is for me?
Yeah, my little story on this is a bit different to most people's in that throughout my sort of school career, I was absolutely convinced I was going to be sort of world-renowned show jumper. So I didn't really need to worry about anything because that was
I
what was
should
going to
play some
happen.
show jumping music at this point.
Yeah. So my life was pretty sorted. I didn't go down that route because actually I didn't agree with some of the welfare issues around how horses are treated. So it's quite interesting that. But I went to work in a vet straight from school. I thought I'm not sure I want to carry on with A levels and stuff like that. I'm really not sure. So I went to work at a vet at the far end of Cornwall, at Land's End, probably the most remote vets in the world. And I quite enjoyed it, but I felt a little bit frustrated, even though I was the only nurse there, not qualified veterinary nurse, but a nurse. I felt a little bit frustrated because I wanted to do a bit more. And we used to have lots of customers coming with their animals. And the vet who I worked with said, most of my job is spent with the people, really, not the animals, and helping them and supporting them. And I thought, well, that's a really good point. And the more I thought about it, the more I thought I was dealing with people. And I loved the animal side of it. But actually, it was how you support the people when they lose an animal or when their animal is having treatment. And I did literally have a light bulb moment one day where I thought, what other professions are like this then that I might have a bit more, I think I was searching for a bit more autonomy. And I thought, I know nursing. That's the one. And it literally was a light bulb moment. And I thought, right, I shall apply to the University of Plymouth and I shall just do it. And literally it was that. And I put the application in and I thought I'll go and see if I can get some bank work. And I did it at hospice. And I absolutely loved it. And I found I got that autonomy that I wanted. And I had that similar connection with people. And it was the talking with people bit that I was quite used to doing when I worked in the vets and showing what I believe was kindness and compassion to them. And actually it always makes people like, oh, animals, people, but it's so similar. And so yeah, that was my light bulb moment. And then I started my nurse training down in Cornwall, very small group. I think it was about 20 of us. And from day one, I loved it. Super inspirational tutor, a lady called Dawn Ball. I remember her to this day. And she was amazing. So yeah, it was a great start. My little sort of swift change that I did in my nurse training was at the end of the Common Foundation program, which I think is about 18 months in. I transferred to the University of Southampton to it because I decided to get some acute experience, which I think was incredibly brave looking back. And a significant change from being in quite remote part of Cornwall. So yeah, that's how it all began for me.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
When you did that move to Southampton, kind of what was going through your head at the time?
I think a lot of things I've done actually have been quite naive. And I just literally was thinking, I've been to visit Southampton and Portsmouth a few times. Wouldn't it be really fun to work in one of those really big hospitals where they've got like a helipad? I was that naive. And I thought, do you know what? I'll just apply. I'll see if they offered me a place. They might not. And my tutor in Cornwall, Dawn Ball, was very supportive and just like, be a great experience. You'd never experienced anything like that here. And again, it was a massive shift that I just remember the first day of going into Southampton General Hospital. It's a huge hospital. It's like an airport. I'm thinking, I have made it, but oh my God, where am I going? There's like 20 million floors. No idea. But again, that great sort of nursing community, day one there, actually, I felt really supported and quite nice structures and things, but it was really fast paced, which I think actually was a great thing for me personally. Really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Sometimes I think some of the best decisions that we make are possibly the most courageous ones.
I would agree with that, Kate. I mean, have you got an example of that? Because something's popped into my mind for yourself, I mean, but I remember when, and also I just want to say that if you're listening to this, guys, and you're thinking, oh, I know, but don't you need to do an options appraisal, and don't you need to, sometimes we can overthink our decisions, and I agree with Kate that sometimes you just need to take leaps. But I was working in an A&E department in Taunton with this incredible nurse called Lawrence Feeney. If you're out there, Lawrence, you know, amazing nurse. And I kept wondering what it was about him that was amazing. And we had a chat one day, and he was telling me that he was an RMN, a mental health nurse. At the time, I was a general qualified nurse. So I just thought, right, I'm going to go and do it. So I found out that in Scotland, you could join them at the 18-month point, and you did 18 months, whereas in England at the time, you had to do 3 years. So I thought, right, I'll go to Scotland. So within 2 weeks, I'm applying, and then I'm working. In 3 months after that, I've got the job, I've got this place on this course, and I'm training to be an RMN, and I am in Dumfries and Galloway, a year after the Lockerbie disaster. Now, I know the Lockerbie series is on the telly at the moment, so I was watching it the other day, and it struck me what an incredible privilege, because as a student, I was in some of the groups that supported the care workers, the health and social care workers who were in the midst of that, as well as some of the community who experienced the Lockerbie disaster. And I was always kind of supervised in those settings, but who normally gets an experience like that, So yeah, all based on meeting an incredible guy in an A&E department, and the rest is history, because being a dual trained nurse has made a massive difference to my nursing knowledge, the way I practice, and my career. So,
gosh, that's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah, I imagine it's very similar for you as well, Vicky, with that change. If you think about where you would be now if you'd stayed in your comfortable place and hadn't, taken that leap and done something else. It's funny, isn't it, how different things will have been.
Yeah, it is amazing, isn't it, when you reflect back on it and you just think, well, I just did it. Didn't think too much about it. I just got on and did it.
I love it. I love it. I love it.
Have you got a just did it thing, Kate, that you think of in your career?
Mine would be handing my notice in at work. I know it's a very different thing, but at the time I was maxed out on my antidepressants. It's not a secret, and I'm not ashamed of it at all in any way, shape or form. And I knew I needed to make a change. I was afraid to make a change. I'd been nursing for a very long time, and it's what I knew, and I'd got the job security and all that goes along with it, but ever so very unhappy. And then it was kind of, and I've never done this before, it was kind of, I need to do something, and I need to do something now. And the next day I handed my notice in. I didn't give it any thought at all. It was just, I need to do something. And to be honest, I haven't looked back. It's not for everybody, and I'm not saying if you're unhappy, just hand your notice in willy-nilly. But for me it was the right decision, and it's kind of taken me down a path that's led me here, and I'm eternally grateful for that. So that was my moment.
Yeah, and we've all got a different story to tell. So I love the variance and variety of nurses and nursing. It's just amazing. Should we ask you what keeps you going when things are crazy, when there's crazy shifts? Is it coffee, chocolate?
Yeah, I do love coffee.
Something else?
I do love coffee, and I am partial to chocolates and sweet things. So I've definitely chosen the right profession, being in nursing, all of those things. But I think really what keeps me going is my colleagues, that team approach, sharing out the problems as well as the joy, and knowing that you've got that supportive network around you, and that being reciprocal as well in that. But I think that's really what keeps me going, is knowing that we're a team and we pull together. Definitely through COVID, that was incredibly challenging for everyone, but to have that strong team, and actually I feel quite lucky because obviously I've worked through COVID, but that I got to work with an amazing team in COVID. And I think, gosh, I feel really sorry for people that didn't go to work or didn't have that connection. So I think, keeps me going is the team.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because they say a lot, and we say the same thing, is it's not necessarily where you work, it's who you work with. And some of my, so A&E is my background, and some of my ever so very closest people to me are the people that I worked with in that department, because you go through the same things together and you get through it together. Because in this job, it's not a job you want to do on your own per se. It's having those people around you who can empathize and understand. So yeah, I absolutely see where you're coming from with that one.
Yeah.
Chocolate is always helpful too.
Yeah, plentiful supply of chocolate. Occasionally I come out of a meeting like on Teams out of my office and I do say, I think I need some emergency chocolate. And I sort of try and raid everyone that is in the building to see, what chocolate have you got? It's an emergency.
Funny little story. So I do agency and bank work now. And when I go to this particular ward, I'd been there, I don't know, it was the first time I'd been there, and I'd been there like an hour, and somebody said, have you been shown the emergency sweetie drawer? And he was like, the what now? Like, the emergency sweetie drawer. And I was like, that's just one of the most amazing things I've ever seen in my career. I love it. Everybody everywhere should have an emergency sweetie drawer.
Yeah, I agree completely. Yeah.
And a funny thing I saw once when I was working nights in a hospital was they had a vending machine, and I went down to get something about 2 o'clock, and this male nurse was like wrestling with this vending machine. Imagine the scene, he's like shaking it. And I said, are you okay? He went, there's a Twix stuck in here. I said, well, I've got a tracker bar if that's any help. Or the chocolate bar.
Oh dear.
Anyway, it was really funny. So he went off with my bit of chocolate offer. Yeah, so funny. So thinking about this guy who didn't keep his cool with the vending machine. So how do you keep your cool then when all he wants to do is scream into a pillow? What do you do?
Yeah, I think I am an optimistic person, annoyingly at times, actually. So my optimism and positivity really helps me. But I do find if something has really, really riled me to the point where you think I can't think straight, definitely if the opportunity is possible to get outside, even just for a couple of minutes, is really helpful. Look up, look at the trees, look at the sky, just have a little bit of a moment. Honestly, even if it's just like a couple of minutes, I think that really helps me. If it's not possible to do it, trying to sort of recreate that in some way, to just try and, I think you guys have talked about this in some of your other podcasts, but to just try and break the state, look out the window, look at something else, I've got like photographs on my desk, look at those, just to try and get out of like the red zone and think straight, because I know I won't think straight in that way. But if I can, getting outside is a really helpful thing for me.
That would always be one of my go-tos is going outside. I think there's just something quite, not magical, but just, when you can breathe.
Yeah, hear the birds. And I read something somewhere that said everyone should be outside for like at least half an hour a day. But if you are stressed out, you need to double it. And I think, that's interesting. That's so true, isn't it? And you feel like there's definitely been times where I've thought, it's like counterproductive to just get outside, but it isn't, because especially if you've got a really, really busy day, you need to have some sort of break in it. Otherwise, you just get slower and slower and slower and slower and slower and less productive. So definitely getting outside, it works for me.
And
how do you?
Sorry, Kate, you go.
Sorry, Tina, go on.
No, it's fine. I was just going to say that I read something recently that if you want to have what Kate and I sometimes call a tricky conversation, that we tend to set up an office scenario for that, don't we? Come into my office or come into this space. But actually that they're a lot more successful if they're outside. So if you could go on a walk with somebody, and you might go sit on a bench somewhere near where you work, but the very act of just going somewhere that feels like less contained, quite helpful. So I thought it was just interesting, based on what you both said, really. Yeah. Kate, sorry, you were going to
Oh,
say
no,
something.
sorry, I was just going to say, how do you keep your sanity?
Fancy, it's a good one, isn't it, to keep? Really. It's quite
Because
important that.
you must have a really busy and stressful job.
Yeah, I think that I do. There's no denying that. I think the things that help me with my sanity are there's a few sort of really operational things. One is actually the variety. So working in a hospice, my goodness, the variety is immense. That's very different to the NHS because one minute you're dealing with very sort of clinical, nursey things, and then the next minute you could be dealing with something to do with the fundraising team, and they're asking something of you, and you need to sign off their publication. And then you might be asked about, we need new taps. Have you seen the taps? Have you approved the taps? And you just think it's so varied, it's unbelievable. And then a relative comes in with a big donation and you need to go and meet them. So it's so varied. So I think in many ways for me, because I love to be a busy person, that variety gives me that and it stops me getting losing sanity through staleness because there's always something going on that's really interesting. So that definitely helps. But I think also I'm a big advocate of coaching. Um, and I found that really helpful to me in my roles. And pretty essential. And within that as well, I find some sort of coaching strategies that help me are being organized. That helps me to keep my sanity. So using technology, but writing lists. I quite like technology. I like a bit of techie stuff. But I do love writing lists. So I do that on my phone. I've got various apps and little organizers. I love the thought of ticking things off a list. Um, I am an organizer and an arranger, and I could arrange the life out of things if I'm not busy. Like I will arrange things to the point of disaster almost. That so yeah, always I do love to arrange and be organized in things. So yeah, I think that's what helps me. And having joyful things outside of work as well, nice things to look forward to, family time and being outside and yeah, adventures as well. Yeah.
So what's your guilty pleasure after a long day?
Yeah, I think my main guilty pleasure, which my 11-year-old daughter has just realised what this is I love to have a soak in the bath, right?
Oh,
Mm.
This isn't just once a day sometimes. I sometimes start off the day with a soak in the bath. If I know I've got a really busy day ahead, I will get up extra early to have a soak in the bath in the morning.
that's
And then I'll have one
dedication.
at the end of the day. And my daughter the other day, she said, hang on a minute, definitely had a bath this morning and you're now having one again. And I was like, don't comment. Like don't analyze that at all. But for me, and I think obviously that's something about, immersing yourself in water and just that, yeah, just I love that. I always have done actually. So that's my guilty pleasure. I love reading as well. I love reading fiction and things, but probably the bath thing, I couldn't actually live without that.
Do you
Are you one
do?
of these? Oh, sorry. I
No,
was going to say,
we
are
were
you
perhaps
one
going
of
to ask the
these?
same thing.
Well, probably not the way that my mind's working, but I was going to be like, are you one of these that just stays in the bath until it goes cold and then you top it up again?
Yeah, yeah, I
You
am.
do,
Yeah,
you do.
yes, yeah, yeah, yeah. And take a cup of tea with me.
Meaning
Yeah,
two
yeah,
hours. What are you
yeah.
doing in there? I'm like, just
I feel we
flying.
might all be on the same page because I was going to ask a similar question like do you take a book and do you have candles and things and make a whole thing
Yeah.
of it?
Yeah, I do, definitely. Oh, I wouldn't do the candles in the morning because that would be a bit too relaxing. But I find it keeps me sort of calm and keeps me in a good state. But definitely a
Mm.
book in the bath, that is a real sort of pleasure. And it always feels like a bit of a luxury. I don't know why, because it's not really a luxury, but there is something around that, just having that time. And I love reading. So being immersed in the bath and in a book is a good combo.
Do you find it helps you sleep better as well? Like, do you notice if you don't have a bath, your sleeping is not as
I am a
good?
really good sleeper, actually. I really value my sleep and I sleep a lot. So I don't know, probably it does. Because if I didn't have a bath, I'd feel like I'd missed something out important in the day, like an important step in my day would be missing. So yeah, maybe it does.
Mm.
Mm.
So thinking about the career you've had, Vicky, and those early days, we have quite a lot of newbies listen to this, don't we,
Mm.
Kate? And newly qualified, etc. So what have you got any advice that someone told you perhaps, or that you think back now and you'd like to give to a newly qualified nurse?
Yeah, I always think it's so exciting. And when I see newly qualified nurses and watch them sort of flourishing, it takes me back completely, which is an amazing thing. And I think it was it's a great time for me. I think my advice, and definitely advice that I had been given by other nurses I'd worked with when I first qualified, was really to grasp every opportunity you can. Any opportunity to see anything, to do anything, grasp it. Don't turn anything down, be the sponge that absorbs everything, and sort of push yourself into that as well. So I think, when you're first qualified, if you get the offer to go and watch any sort of surgery, be the first person to put your hand up. I definitely did that when I worked in neurology, which gave me a real desire to do it, to go and watch brain surgery. And other people were like, oh, no, I don't want to do that. And I didn't think about it. I'll do it. I'll come watch. So I think really grasping every opportunity, but also, giving yourself bit of time to reflect on those things, then to unpick them and think how you're going to move forward. And my other advice for anyone that's newly qualified is to, know that you're part of that team. You are, you've got through all your training, which is giving you the very best skills. You'll never be more up to date than you are when you first qualified. You'll never be more on it than you are then, because your brain is so primed and ready. So I think you're such a valuable member of the team, and you need to feel that. You don't want to feel, out on a limb on your own. You are part of that team and really valuable. So yeah.
I think those are probably words that our newly qualified need to hear, because it's so easy to go into a new environment and feel like an outsider.
Yeah.
So I think that will be like just the pep talk that they need.
Yeah.
Right now.
And be yourself. I always I've always found that you just have to be true to yourself. And if you go in, start the shift, and you're like, oh, do we have a cup of tea now? Shall I make everyone a cup of tea? Having come from like the Vine of Cornwall, where tea is like medicine, like everyone is offered a cup of tea whether you want it or not. That's often the way as a student nurse. If I went to a new placement, I'd be like, oh, do we have a cup of tea? Decide, shall I make everyone a cup of tea? Who would like a cup of tea? And I just think, oh, and I can even hear myself now thinking back of that and thinking that's the top. But it did actually break barriers down as well, and sort of connect you to some of the team who would be like, oh yeah, go on then, how lovely. So I think it's being, be yourself, isn't it?
It's amazing. It's the power of the cup of tea.
Yeah.
It is a power, isn't it? Just a cup of tea. Makes everything better, or we like to think it makes everything better. So any other tips on making friends and allies
I think
the work environment?
In a work environment, and when you're new, I think it's taking an interest in people. I generally think most people go into nursing or any sort of healthcare profession because you quite like people. I hope you like them. So I think it's taking an interest in people, isn't it? It's finding out a bit about them, not in a like an interview way, but in a genuinely interested way. Oh, I noticed you rode your bike in, or just all those sorts of things. I think taking an interest in people makes a big difference. And that does help you to make friends. And I think it's being genuine, isn't it? To that. Remembering people's names is always good, but also if you don't remember it, saying it. Don't going on and on and on, not remembering someone's name. That's never good. People do. But yeah, I think taking an interest. And when you work alongside someone, giving them some praise and some feedback of saying, "No, I really enjoyed working with you. I really, valued what you brought to that." Because we all have those moments, and where someone does something completely different to the way you do it, and you think, "Oh, that was brilliant. Can I steal that in the future? Can I use that phrase that you used?" And I think those are the things that help us to connect with each other. And ultimately, we're working all for patients, and the patients at the centre of what we do. So that's our connection, isn't it? And I think that helps us all to know that we're on the same page. And I found that working with, with other disciplines as well. And I've been really lucky to work with some real world-renowned neurologists who are very down to earth and very nice people, because we are all there for the patients, and actually that's our connection. And it's knowing that that's the thread between us all, isn't it?
Mm.
Mm.
Well, so much of what you've just said is so helpful, Vicky. And I was thinking about how sometimes that's worked for me, that complementary kind of noticing something about a person when it comes to patience. And I remember it just made immediately when you talk about it, made me thought of a situation in which I walked onto a ward and they were like, this is a difficult family in inverted brackets. And in the future, Kate and I are going to do a podcast episode on difficult people, families, and patients and why they get those labels. So we'll look out for that, everybody. But anyway, that was the scenario. And I walked into this room and they had angry faces sat around the bed. And I thought, I felt the vibe. And I thought, yes, we're not a happy bunch. And she had on the most stunning brogues, like a rusty coloured, gorgeous brogue, this lady. And I said, hi, who I was. I said, can I just say, those are gorgeous shoes. And she said, oh, thank you. They're from Russell and Bromley. I said, just beautiful. Anyway, let me not get distracted by the shoes. The real thing I've come to talk to you. And they completely relaxed. And we went into a room and we had a cup of tea, Kate, the universal kind of salve elixir. And we had a good conversation. They were still cross as anything about a number of things. And actually, they had good reason to be. But I truly believe that what got me into that conversation in a smoother way was complimenting the shoes and then being up for a cup of tea.
Yeah, it's fascinating, that, isn't it? I think it is. As human beings, we want to connect to each other. I think we are, we're herd animals, aren't we? So we like connection. And obviously there are times when we might need a break from that. But I think it is that, and definitely with patients, I love that. I love getting to know patients. And that's why I loved working with people with Parkinson's for such a long time, because such an amazing group of people to work with, and getting to know histories and lives and amazing careers and adventures. And you just feel like it's such a privilege, isn't it? And you've got that little insight and you're in complete awe of those people and how lucky to be able to care for them and try and help them. So, yeah,
the other
connectedness.
thing to add to that is, especially if you see these patients on a regular basis and you remember something about them, it helps that they felt listened to and they've been heard, because you've remembered things that you've said to them. And that stuff is invaluable when it comes to developing those relationships and that rapport, that connection. It makes such a difference, doesn't it?
Yeah, and I think it's that what we want to do as nurses. I think it brings it back to that, doesn't it? And it's lovely when you have that. And actually it's lovely, when patients remember you as well, because you're just one of many people. And I know that sounds a bit selfish, but it's really lovely when they do. And you just think, oh my word, you actually remember me of all the people. You actually remember that one thing I did. Because as nurses, to be completely honest, that fulfills us, doesn't it? That recognition from patients and feeling that you've done something good for them.
Yeah. I guess that leads me to what might be our last question, Vicky, actually, is what is fulfilling about nursing for you?
Yeah, I think because my career has evolved, so I don't have that much direct patient contact now. I do still have some, but not as much. But I think knowing the positive impact on patient and families is so fulfilling, to know that people, for me, in my role, it's knowing that people can access hospice care that need it, them and their families, that it can make such a massive difference. And actually, when I'm at the hospice, hearing patients and family members having nice moments together, maybe children playing, maybe because we like to do different things, like some music, or like there's a movie, or there's football. I'm not a big football fan, but there's a lot of football fans in the male population. So hearing like football games, being played and all those things on the TV for patients and big things made about that, it really brings joy to me. I find that so fulfilling. And yeah, I think even slightly removed, enabling people to do that. We've had some great examples of our team members who've really done some exceptional things to bring joy to patients and fulfill some of their wishes that they have. So definitely the patient connection, but also seeing my team thrive. So seeing them being able to do that and seeing them maybe doing difficult things actually and absolutely smashing it. That really makes me so fulfilled, that what a great team, that we're all working together and that they've done that. So I find that really fulfilling. And I guess it's that shared sense of values, isn't it, as well? And we're all in it together, and it's just keeping remembering that. So yeah, I do find that very fulfilling. So yeah, and I think it helps working in a great setting. I had it yesterday in the hospice. There was a few dogs that had come for patients to visit. Oh, they were so adorable. Everyone loves the dogs. Everyone goes all mushy over the dogs. But then, yeah, hearing the family members playing with the dogs outside, you're just like, oh, that's so absolutely lovely. That's what it's all about.
Vicky, thank you so much for your time and your words of wisdom. It's been an absolute joy to have you with us. So I thank you a lot. Our listeners are going to love this episode. So on that note, from me, thank you very much. Tina?
And thank you so much from me, Vicky. It's been joyful talking to you. And thank you for coming on A Nurse's Lift to Work.
Thank you.
You've been listening to A Nurse's Lift to Work with Kate and Tina. Please remember, this is not a replacement for medical treatment or help, so do seek assistance if you need to.
Thank you for joining us. Please do like, subscribe, give us stars, like and share with your friends and colleagues. All the good things.